studying your last two. I swim with tea when they turned in. The staring down to mute and can lend a pole that some kid died.
One question that frequently arises in practice is whether accountants can update a corporation's minute book as part of the services they provide to clients. At first glance, this may seem like a simple question. However, the answer is often more complex because minute book work sits at the intersection of accounting and legal documentation. On the left side of the slide, we see the types of activities that accountants commonly perform. These include preparing dividend schedules, calculating dividend amounts, maintaining shareholder records, reviewing share structures, and organizing the financial information needed to support corporate transactions. These activities are closely connected to accounting, tax planning, and financial record keeping. On the right side, we see the work that is traditionally associated with legal professionals. This includes preparing corporate resolutions, drafting legal documentation, interpreting corporate law requirements, and ensuring that corporate actions are properly authorized and recorded from a legal perspective. The minute book often sits in the overlap between these two areas. Both accountants and lawyers may be involved in the process, but their roles can differ depending on the jurisdiction, professional regulations, and the nature of the specific work being performed. That is why the central question on the slide is so important. Who should perform the work? There is no single answer that applies in every situation. Different provinces, professional bodies, and regulatory frameworks may have different rules regarding what services accountants may provide and what services are considered the practice of law. In some situations, accountants may assist with gathering information, maintaining records, and supporting the documentation process. In other situations, legal involvement may be necessary to prepare resolutions or address more complex corporate law matters. The important lesson is not to assume that all minute book work is purely accounting work or purely legal work. Instead, practitioners should recognize that there can be overlap and should understand the professional boundaries that apply within their jurisdiction. The key takeaway from this slide is that the answer depends on professional rules, jurisdiction, and the nature of the work being performed. Good corporate documentation often involves cooperation between accountants and lawyers, with each professional contributing within the scope of their expertise and responsibilities. One of the most important professional considerations when dealing with minute book work is understanding the difference between administrative activities and legal activities. At first glance, these tasks can appear very similar because both involve corporate records, documentation, and compliance. However, from a professional responsibility perspective, the distinction can be extremely important. On the left side of the slide, we see examples of administrative activities. These are tasks that support the organization and maintenance of corporate records. Examples include maintaining corporate files, preparing schedules and summaries, organizing documents, gathering dividend information, tracking corporate actions, and ensuring that records are complete and up to date. These activities are often procedural in nature. They focus on collecting, organizing, and maintaining information rather than making legal determinations. Because of this, they are generally viewed as lower-risk administrative support activities. On the right side of the slide, we see examples of legal activities. These involve legal judgment, legal interpretation, or the provision of legal advice. Examples include drafting legal opinions, advising clients on legal rights and obligations, preparing complex legal documents, determining the legal consequences of transactions, and interpreting corporate law requirements. These activities require professional legal expertise because they involve applying legal principles to specific situations and advising clients on the legal implications of their decisions. The challenge arises because some minute book work may appear to sit somewhere between these two categories. A practitioner may begin by organizing records and gathering information, but at some point the work may require legal interpretation or legal judgment. That is why the central question on the slide is so important. Where is the line? The answer often depends on the jurisdiction, professional regulations, licensing requirements, and the specific facts of the engagement. What is considered administrative support in one situation may become legal work in another. For this reason, practitioners should always be careful not to assume that every task involving a minute book is purely administrative. Understanding where administrative support ends and legal services begin is an important part of professional risk management. The key takeaway from this slide is that not all minute book work is treated the same. Practitioners must recognize the distinction between administrative activities and legal services, understand the limits of their professional role, and seek legal involvement whenever the work requires legal advice, interpretation, or judgment. After discussing the distinction between administrative work and legal work, the next question becomes, what is the best practical approach for serving clients while managing professional risk? For most practitioners, the answer is collaboration. This slide illustrates a workflow that clearly separates responsibilities while allowing each professional to contribute their expertise to the process. The process begins with the business owner. The owner decides whether a dividend should be paid based on business objectives, available profits, cash flow considerations, and overall tax planning goals. The owner also provides the information needed to support the decision. The next step involves the accountant. The accountant analyzes the share structure, calculates dividend amounts, prepares supporting schedules, and gathers shareholder information. This work provides the financial foundation for the dividend transaction and helps ensure that the numbers are accurate. Once the calculations and supporting information have been assembled, the information moves to the lawyer. The lawyer reviews the documentation, prepares the necessary corporate resolutions, addresses any legal requirements, and ensures that the transaction is properly documented from a corporate law perspective. After the legal documentation is completed, the corporation's minute book and corporate records are updated. The resolutions, dividend declarations, and supporting documentation become part of the corporation's permanent records. The result is a complete and organized corporate record system that accurately reflects the transaction and supports the corporation's tax and legal position. Notice the professional tips shown at the bottom of the slide. These are valuable risk management principles for practitioners. First, understand the rules that govern your profession and licensing requirements. Second, clearly understand the limits of your role and responsibilities. Third, document who is responsible for each part of the engagement and maintain good communication throughout the process. Another important principle is knowing when to involve legal counsel. If a matter requires legal interpretation, legal advice, or complex corporate law analysis, involving a lawyer can help protect both the client and the practitioner. Ultimately, the strongest results occur when accountants, lawyers, and business owners work together as a team. Each professional contributes a different area of expertise, and the client benefits from a process that is both technically accurate and properly documented. The key takeaway from this slide is that clear professional roles and effective communication create the best protection for everyone involved. Collaboration helps ensure that dividends are accurately calculated, properly documented, legally compliant, and fully supported by complete corporate records.